This video is sponsored by Surfshark. For quite some time, we have covered what some have called the Secret War or the Cold War within the Disney Corporation, and we have covered it primarily from the Star Wars or Marvel point of view, as that is what an entertainment channel like this generally does. In reality though, those are just the outwardly most visible points where the real conflict manifests itself. And that real conflict has always been between activists who want to use Disney's brands as a platform for ideopolitical messaging in one end, and those who want to increase the company's value in service of Disney shareholders in the other. And the end results of each perspective are plainly visible on screen. Case in point, when Luke Skywalker was made a burnt-out, miserable old loser in The Last Jedi, and shown in every way to be subpar to the innately perfect Rey Palpatine, then that was the activists' messaging shining through. But when the Luke Skywalker that fans always wanted was brought back, lightsaber blazing, in the Mandalorian episode unironically titled The Rescue, that was done in the service of shareholder value. Because when fans are happy, they spend money on product, and that makes shareholders happy. Alas, what makes fans happy makes the activists sad and upset. And since taking over, Bob Chapek has made a lot of moves which have made a lot of activists very sad and very upset indeed. So much so that in the last couple of weeks, this very real conflict between ideology and commercial interest has shown through the veneer and hit the mainstream. And the one being scapegoated for it is none other than Bob Chapek. In this editorial then, I will begin by ever so briefly going through how legislation in the state of Florida was utilized to bring about this major escalation, how it may have weakened Bob Chapek, and finally, what the possible outcomes of this may be. In other words, since it directly affects our entertainment, we will be touching on subject matters that has gotten to quite a few people. And some of Disney's responses may even have caused some of you watching to throw up your arms in frustration, cancel Disney Plus, and take to the high seas instead, just in time for Moon Knight. Do note, however, that this is something that neither Midnight's Edge, our sponsors, nor any other affiliates condones. Not only is piracy wrong, you would be exposing yourself to endless spyware, tracking software, and other malware out there on the high seas. And that's on top of all the data that is stolen from you during all your regular browsing activities. Well, modern problems require modern solutions, and many of them can be found in a VPN, such as the one delivered by this channel's sponsor, Surfshark. A VPN, or Virtual Private Network, is a privacy protection tool which guarantees instant online safety and encrypts all data sent via the internet. On top of that, Surfshark allows you to bypass geo-blocking restrictions by changing the country you access the internet from, which also gives you access to 15 different Netflix libraries by simply changing your virtual location. Not only that, outside of the US, Star, the international version of Hulu, comes bundled with Disney+. If you're in the US and change your location to, say, the UK, well then you just might get that too. One of the advantages with Surfshark over many other VPN providers is that it allows one account to be used on unlimited devices. That's part of the reason why Surfshark is the VPN of our choice, and it gets even better. If you type in the code MIDNIGHT when ordering, that triggers an exclusive offer in which you now get 83% off the normal list price, plus 3 extra months for free. Surfshark also offers a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's no risk in trying it out. Do check out the link in the description below for further details and to order. Thanks to Surfshark for sponsoring this video, and with that, let's get back to how the tensions behind the scenes at Disney now have come out of the dark. We have previously reported how Bob Chapek, by all outwardly accounts, is not an activist. On the contrary, it would appear as though he was placed in power by key shareholders, against former CEO Bob Iger's express wishes and for the explicit purposes of once again making Disney a for-profit company, as opposed to a company that encourages its employees to be activists at shareholder expense, which is what Bob Iger set the stage for and enabled. The most visible outlets for this activism in the past few years has been coming from Marvel and Lucasfilm, and many have asked, if Chapek is so concerned with profits, Why hasn't he fired the key activists in those divisions? There are two related answers to that. One is that it's not just Marvel and Lucasfilm. There are activists at every level of the company, ready to create major disturbances whenever something does not go their way, which is what has happened now. Chapek has had to avoid an all-out riot, because he has bigger fish to fry than just Marvel and Lucasfilm. But even there, work has been done. But since there are activists at every level, Chapek also can't be seen to be too aggressive in singling any individual activist out, as again, that may spark a riot. Instead of targeting those subverting the company from within directly, Chapek has restructured the company to add in new levels of checks and balances, as well as made moves towards gradually taking the company in a more politically neutral direction. And by all accounts, this has been working. Like any big ship though, it takes time for a company like Disney to completely change course, but the right moves were being made to prevent Disney's content from being too overtly activist. On the Star Wars front, as we shall see in a later video update, Kathleen Kennedy has largely been defanged as much as she possibly can be, in light of her contract from the Iger era. Reshoots were mandated in a number of Marvel productions, and rumors would have it not all of them happened at the request of Kevin Feige, and some scenes were even cut from animated projects like Buzz Lightyear, all in the name of making more commercially viable products. But this, of course, has not gone down well in certain activist quarters. And a little while ago, something that could be weaponized against Chapek emerged. The bill in question is formally called Parental Rights in Education, and fundamentally it prohibits schools from withholding from parents what their children in years 1 to 3 of elementary school are being taught, especially in biology and sex ed. The bill doesn't explicitly ban anything, but it mandates transparency, which in turn leads to some natural restrictions. That alone shouldn't cause too much ire, but it rubs some very powerful and very organized people in very high places the wrong way, which is subsequently why the media collectively refers to it as the Don't Say Gay Bill, which is a complete strawman and total misrepresentation of the bill itself. But this deliberate mislabeling brings about emotion and ire, because while facts may not care about feelings, feelings also don't care about facts. This then shuts down any debate and enables anyone not wildly opposed to the bill to be vilified. That is what happened to Bob Chapek. Of course, the bill and its ensuing outrage would have happened anyway, with or without Bob Chapek at the helm of Disney. But since it happened while he was running the show, the deliberately misleading narrative of what the bill is was used as a means to take Chapek to task for Disney's increasing political neutrality, and to that end, for even having financially supported some of the politicians behind the bill. When Chapek later caved to the pressure and did the capital error of apologizing and announcing that Disney would do better, the protest against him naturally did not wane. No, now that there was blood in the water, the protest against him increased. Walkouts were planned, and a website, whereischapek.com, was even created to further the narrative and portray Chapek as someone not on the right side of history, as well as to try to force him into taking Disney in an all-out activist direction. It looked as though Chapek had the very riot he tried so hard to avoid on his hands. And the kind of bad press he was getting is the very kind of bad press that can cause a board to fire a CEO. As we've pointed out in our earlier videos detailing Bob Chapek's efforts at bringing Disney back to commercialism, videos which frequently feature analysis from Kamran Pasha, the anti-Chapek articles tend to come from the trades covering the entertainment industry, while the pro-Chapek articles comes from the finance and investment trades. This is to be expected as Chapek comes from the world of finance and investment, while those working against him are incumbents of the entertainment industry. Hence, Fortune magazine, which is read by Disney's biggest investors, made a nice summary of the situation, reminding everyone that the bad press Chapek and Disney is getting right now is the direct result of Bob Iger's previous mismanagement of the company, and to remind Disney investors in particular that Chapek was brought in to clean up Iger's mess in the first place. Fortune sums up the situation as follows. 8 months after taking over as CEO, Chapek announced he was strategically reorganizing the company's media and entertainment businesses, and centralizing budget power under his right-hand man, Karim Daniel. In doing so, he took away profit and loss power from many of Disney's veteran division leaders and consolidated all that control under Daniel. Note the implication here. Disney's veteran division leaders are all crazy people put there by Iger. They're too important to be outright fired, but too crazy to be let loose. So Chapek installed mechanisms to keep them in check. Tensions within the Disney camp have been further heightened over the Don't Say Gay bill, with staff reportedly voicing their dissatisfaction directly to Iger. That's really interesting. Fortune is saying the Iger-installed crazies are voicing their dissatisfaction directly to Iger, even though he's out of Disney by now. Is that an implication that Iger is still there, behind the scenes, stirring shit up? Is it an implication that maybe Iger wants to come back? Because remember, he didn't want to leave. Food for thought, but moving on with the article. After the initial outcry from employees and fans, Chapek apologized for his mute stance on the bill. LGBTQIA+ workers of the company issued a response to the apology, saying in an open letter, "While we certainly appreciate Bob Chapek's apology note, there is still more work to be done." Prior to the apology, divisions within Disney had taken their own actions against the bill, a deviation from Iger's style of communication, where most of Disney's stances on political and social issues would come directly from him. Again, Forbes is bringing up Iger, while suggesting that these mutinous division leaders aren't loyal to Chapek. The article concluded by reminding its readers, many of which, again, are key Disney shareholders, that ultimately though, Chapek's future will be decided on how his business and leadership strategy fares, and so far, he's kept investors happy. Disney's fiscal first quarter results blew away analyst expectations with earnings per share, revenue, and total Disney Plus subscribers all higher than estimated. But while this article circulated, the activist rebellion against Chapek's politically neutral stance continued. So far, the protests against Bob Chapek culminated with a major walkout on March 22nd. Which was orchestrated by the highly organized Disney Walkout Group, and they have some highly political demands for Chapek and Disney, both in terms of how Disney is to be run, the messaging in Disney's products, as well as organizations and interest groups to fund and politicians not to fund. To show they meant business, hundreds of Disney employees were supposed to picket, take to the streets, both in Disney's LA and Florida locations. The details on how well that went became readily apparent over the course of the following day. In Florida, one single masked individual came to protest. In LA, a whopping 22 showed up. The Disney walkout movement tried to spin it as a great success, and you could not make this up. They invoked Star Wars The Last Jedi, obviously because with its message of "let the past die, bury it if you have to." It is a movie which in every way symbolizes their ideology, and it reflects what they want all of Disney's output to be. But will Disney cave to their demands? What these walkouts show is that behind all of the headlines, behind all the carefully created web pages, and carefully crafted extortion letters, are in reality exceedingly few individuals. There are obviously more than those who showed up to protest, but perhaps not that many more. This is clearly a tiny minority of radical activists trying to force a major corporation to bend its knees. And in the process, they of course create a deeply toxic work environment for everyone. What this walkout showed though is that the emperor has no clothes. They are loud, they appear many, but they are few. But will the board recognize that? Will they stand behind Chapek and let him continue to do what he was doing? Because based on these reactions, it must have been working. Or will they cave to the pressure and give in to the activist demands? Let me know what you think in the comments. And before you go, remember that to help bypass quarrelsome geo-blocking restrictions and more, you should get Surfshark VPN. Use our code MIDNIGHT to get 83% off, plus 3 extra months for free. Link is in the description.